Welcome. As in everything else this past year, our San Damiano stations will look a bit different as well. My name is Jan Stegner, and I will be joined every week by a different guest to walk you through the stations. On Saturdays, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., you will have the opportunity to drive to San Damiano and listen to the taped version via your iPhone. There is about a 25 to 30 second time frame to walk from station to station, so you will have time to walk safely as you go through the Stations of the Cross. Depending on the station chosen for the day, sometimes you will be invited to pray as you walk from station to station. This week, we welcome Sister Celeste, Spiritual Director and Retreat Presenter here at San Damiano. The version of the stations we will be praying this morning is The Way of the Cross, The Path to New Life by Joan Chittister. These stations are in a book written by Sister Joan, and we've modified them a bit so to work within a well-timed framework. Each station is met with 4 themes this morning. The themes are the experience, the call, the model, and the rising. Sister Celeste will be reading the call and the rising, and I will be reading the experience and the model. The Way of the Cross, The Path to New Life by Joan Chittister. Station 1, Jesus is condemned to death. The experience. Accused, judged, and condemned, Jesus stands totally undone, emotionally drained, more by the charges against him than by any act of physical violence. Here, in this first station, we see what actually happens to the person who is publicly incriminated by a system that is clearly arrayed against him. It is a moment of inner pain and loss greater than anything anyone can possibly do to hurt a person. It is not the pain of the body, it is the pain of the soul.
The call. The first station, condemnation without a cause, is a call to put our trust in God when the world around us has abandoned us, when there is little of our own internal resources left on which we may depend, when we find ourselves despised by those with whom we most wanted to succeed.
The model. Jesus, the model of inner strength at a time of serious public pressure, stands tall and strong in the face of injustice. He acknowledges the moment but does not give in to it. He does not betray either his faith in God or his own consciousness of the will of God for him. Instead, he stands up to his accusers with dignity and grace.
The rising. The question with which the first station confronts us is a stark one. What is it in life for which we are willing to be condemned? The goal in life is not to avoid condemnation. No one does. Life's great challenge is simply to decide who will condemn us and why. The first station reminds us we know we will not be there alone. Jesus will be standing beside us, full of pain for our sake, but head up and unyielding.
And when you hear the sound of the bell, you can move on to the next station, and we'll give you some time to do that. Station 2. Jesus takes up his cross. The experience. The unpredictable burdens of life are part and parcel of being alive. Difficulties are everywhere and at every level of existence. The relationship ends, the friends go, the success goes to someone else. The illnesses come on quickly and fells us without warning. The truth is that there are two distinct kinds of crosses. The first comes to us out of nowhere, without warning, not at our own hand, just one of the circumstances of life. The second kind of cross we make for ourselves, inadvertently perhaps, but consciously nevertheless.
The call. This station asks us all a very different question. For what would you be willing to risk your life? What crosses do you yourself take on, knowing the risk, understanding the cost, and being committed to its consequences? The call for the second station is no small mission. It requires us to live life consciously, to know what's going on around us, to take some kind of responsibility, however small, for the welfare of others, for justice in the part of the universe we call our homes, our country, our world.
The model. What we see in Jesus in the second station is a striking challenge. The second station of the cross teaches us that commitment costs. To choose one path in life from another is to choose its consequences. Real commitment implies that, like Jesus, we carry burdens of our choices in bad times as well as good, on difficult days as well as easy ones, in the face of opposition as well as at times of public or popular support.
The rising. The very impulse to choose the best over the comfortable or the secure is a sign that the resurrection has begun in us. Every action of Jesus to stretch the vision of Israel made him more and more an enemy of the system. But it also made him more and more clearly a sign of the presence of God on earth. So it will do the same in us.
Station 3. Jesus falls the first time. The experience. At the third station, all pretense ends. Reality sets in. Jesus, the wonder worker, at the height of his popularity, fell in the dirty, garbage-strewn street of a sandy village in the Middle East. It is easy to forget now that he looked anything but regal, that the crown was made from the branches of a thorn bush, and that this is the one who said, "Come, follow me." It is easy to ignore the necessary question now. Will you?
The call. The day we fail in the face of everyone we have ever wanted to hear applaud us is the day of truth. That is the day we finally begin to determine what is really important in life. An experience of failure requires us to turn life upside down, to turn ourselves upside down. The process is an important one. It is the dialect of the cross in which courage means more than security, and the coming of the reign of God means more than public success.
The model. The sight of it is devastating. He is on the ground now, knee in the dirt, clinging to the cross itself to hold him up. The fact is that Jesus could have stayed down where he fell, having decided that he's gone far enough, leaving it to his executioners to drag him the rest away. But he didn't. Instead, he showed us all that the important things in life are worth struggling for to the end.
The rising. The gift of life that comes with the third station is a simple one. What grows in us as we sit with this station is the awareness that reality is greater than either image or fantasy. To accept reality as it is, to give ourselves for the lives of others, is the only thing that can enlarge our stature and will not diminish us as we go.
Station 4. Jesus meets his mother. The experience. Central to this station is Mary, the mother, the one who never goes away, regardless who says what about the Savior of the people, who is at one and the same time the enemy of the state. Mary, who herself braved the negative reactions of both religion and culture to have this child, refuses to deny him now. Love for the outcast is the gift she brings to the moment. The proclamation of presence is the sermon she preaches. Disgraced in the eyes of the population who have abandoned him, she does nothing to hide her love or her continuing commitment.
The call. The fourth station is the station of unconditional love, the kind of love that cannot be diminished under any conditions, regardless of any accusations, whatever the cost to self. That is the love that is godly, that does not judge, that stands by, that knows the best and believes it.
The model. The fourth station of the cross teaches us the freedom that comes with real love. Jesus and Mary meet under the worst circumstances. He has become an enemy of the state, an outcast from the synagogue. She is a widow left alone in a male world without the sustenance of her only son and no visible means of support. Both of them, in a way, are condemned to death.
The rising. The question with which the fourth station of the cross confronts us is, why do we love and how well? The moment of new life happens for us when we can love the other and at the same time let them go. Let them free to become the wholeness of themselves. Allow them to do what they are meant to do in life. Love like that can never fail us because the freedom we give to the other to become frees our own becoming as well.
Station 5. Simon helps Jesus carry his cross. The experience. The fifth station confronts a rigidly stratified world with the great crossover moments in life. What are we supposed to do when we find ourselves face to face with something no one wants to get involved in, but what we also know must be done? Simon of Cyrene was in the crowd when Roman soldiers, fearful that their prisoner would die before they had a chance to crucify him on Calvary, forced him into helping Jesus lift the heavy cross. There is no word in Scripture about how Simon responded or why he hadn't stopped to help in the first place, but we can guess. He was embarrassed, perhaps, irritated, perhaps, repulsed, perhaps. And all those things are exactly the proof that we are being called to do something. The fact is that when we feel like that about something, it is sure proof that we are being called to respond to it.
The call. The call of the fifth station is a clear one. The function of the follower of Christ is to get involved. The people we call outcasts in a society riven by poverty, war, racism, and sexism are the crucifixion figures of our time, bowed under the weight of injustice, suffering from a system that has made them outcasts and invisible.
The model. The fifth station of the cross demonstrates for us the power of presence in the lives of the poor and oppressed. Being where suffering is, associating ourselves with it, standing with those whom society has condemned, is a great and gracious witness. The questions with which the fifth station of the cross confronts us are, what are we being called to do for someone in need right now for which we are a disinclined observer? When we open our hearts to the other in need, we are very likely to discover that our own hidden needs have been healed in the process.
The rising. We go through this life meeting, partying, working with the same people. We dig a moat of church-going, civil engagements, and neighborhood gates around us to the point that we never see what is on the other side of those barriers. We keep the drawbridges of our small worlds raised and run the risk of missing the Jesus figures who walk by looking for our help, our presence, our companionship through life.
Station 6. Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. The experience. Veronica has become part of the universal spiritual psyche in the Stations of the Cross, because the witness of Veronica to the power of witness stands for all to see. What does Veronica do? Not much. What does Veronica mean to the spirit of the stations? Close to everything.
The call. In Veronica's mild, womanly way, there is embedded a striking call to authenticity, to being what we are meant to be, to doing what must obviously be done no matter who approves, no matter who thinks this is neither the place nor the time. It takes the breath away to imagine stepping out in the middle of a street gang to wash the face of a beaten young man. Nowhere are we to allow the Jesus figures of our day, the poor and oppressed, to suffer where we are.
The model. The sixth station of the cross calls us to realize that compassion is the counterpart of justice. To fail to practice mercy in the presence of injustice is to neglect half the face of God. Jesus does not resist the journey to the cross, but he does respond most to the act of comfort in the midst of oppression.
The rising. The question with which the sixth station confronts us is, who is there, whose life you deplore, that you have to reach out and help? The meaning of the station is obvious. Every time we make life physically better for someone, the face of Jesus becomes clearer and clearer in us. We become more of what we are meant to be. We rise out of a petty past and become a clearer, cleaner, brighter picture of the face of Jesus ourselves.
Station 7. Jesus falls the second time. The experience. This station touches the deepest part of the word doubt. Faced with something that bested us the last time we met it, the whole thought of dealing with it again can make the heart go weak. How can we even dare to think of getting up and going on again? In fact, why even bother to try? Here, at the seventh station, we see Jesus fall again, more tired this time, more dejected this time, even less committed, perhaps. Why not just die in the dirt? Why try to get up at all? It is the eternal question of life in general. More important, it is the question of the spiritual life too.
The call. The call to holiness, to witness, to commitment is undeniable now. The Jesus who falls a second time gets up a second time, determined to see this cross to the end. The call to live our lives to the pinnacle of the truth within us, however impossible it may seem along the way, is a clarion one. We are each here to give our best and to give our all in the service of the will of God for us. There is no going back. There is no staying down. We bother to get up and try again because we said we would.
The model. The seventh station of the cross reminds us that obstacles are a regular, a normal, even necessary part of life. It is the obstacles we meet along the way, the problems we overcome, the setbacks we survive, that measure the value of the enterprise at hand. They give us both perspective and wisdom. Once we have stumbled but continue the race, collapsed but not quit, fought and endured, no pain is too much, no cost too heavy to pay for what is worth laying down our lives for it. The question with which the seventh station confronts us are, is there anything important enough in our lives, our goals, our faith for which we are willing to endure both pain and doubt, even when it seems to be impossible?
The rising. We are risen to a new level of life when we come to understand that the ultimate purpose of life is to focus ourselves on something worth struggling beyond our strength to attain. It is the moment of freedom in us. Being willing to get up again in the attempt to live life well is the resurrection moment promised in the seventh station.
Station 8. Jesus meets the weeping women of Jerusalem. The experience. A somewhat of a miracle happens at the 8th station. The world's most unlikely group of supporters steps into the scene. They were not the apostles and disciples who had enhanced their own reputations by their association with him. They were not a group of people whom he had healed in the course of his ministry. They were not the people of influence or the upper class whose testimony and character witness he might have needed. No, they were no one of importance at all. They were, in fact, just women. They were a ragtag body of women whose brave presence made it clear that Jesus, who had been condemned by the upper class, was, nevertheless, a hero to the underclass. In fact, it was for that very reason that the upper class had to get rid of him.
The call. This station calls us to look again at those we ignore. But this time, we are called to look with care. We are called to really see the situation in which they live. We are called to forego criticism that condemns people whose lives and circumstances we do not know to the margins of society forever. We are called to realize that we ignore these people to our peril as well as theirs.
The model. The question with which the 8th station of the cross confronts us is, do we really reject what we call sinful, or do we really reject only the sinners themselves? The question brings us to face ourselves at our deepest, darkest core. This station calls us to go beyond what is to what must be.
The rising. To begin to see beyond the person to the environment, to the social policies of a system, to the circumstances for an understanding of life is to begin to live life to the fullest. Then we are less likely to allow individuals to bear the sins that belong to us all. Then we rise to a new level of wisdom. We do more than live our lives, we begin to give life to others as well.
Station 9. Jesus falls a third time. The experience. Life is a matter of going on beyond the impossible. when the work is draining, but we do it despite that because others will suffer if we do not, we are fully alive. When the great ideal of our hearts is far, far beyond our recourses, but we strive for it regardless, we are fully alive. And the world is better because we are here. When we continue to do the difficult for us because it is worth doing, then we have become the fullness of ourselves. Then there is nothing we want to do that is impossible. Like the child in the race, it will only take us a little longer to do it.
The call. The call of the 9th station is to refuse to give up doing what the world needs to have done simply because we do not succeed at it on the first try. The call is to see failure as part of the process of our lives and to learn from it accordingly. There's no call as important as refusing to quit doing what is worth doing.
The model. The questions with which the 9th station confronts us are challenging ones. Are we about something impossible enough to be worth every effort in our lives? And if not, why not? What great contest, what inconceivable race is life about for us?
The rising. When we refuse to give up, when we go on trying whatever the odds against success, something new is born in us. Instead of a sense of failure, the very matter of trying recreates our sense of purpose and our sense of commitment. What will happen to the will of God for the world if we will doggedly go on giving our own lives to it, so that others may know its fullness in their own life? To rise to new life in our own time, it is necessary that we rise to every call of every station to which Jesus leads us.
Station 10. Jesus is stripped of his garments. The experience. The meaning of the 10th station of the cross is clear. It is psychological obliteration, the deep down fear of every thinking human being from the point of grade school humiliations to disgrace at the pinnacles of life. Far worse, that time in prison is the publicity that precedes it. And for what use?
The call. The humble person cannot be humiliated because the humble person does not wear a mask to begin with. What you see in them is exposure because they have never pretended to be anything more, anything other than the most stripped down presentation of themselves implies. They put on no airs, they do no artful pretending, they tell no social climbing lies, they refuse to make their costumes themselves. They are simply one more person among the persons of the world.
The model. The 10th station of the cross confronts us with the inevitable in every life. Somewhere along the way, we each get stripped of what we have spent our lives acquiring, of things closest to our hearts, of possessions or positions that made us who we thought we were. The question with which the 10th station faces us is, what is underneath the garments of pomp, authority, dignity, and wealth that we have so carefully cultivated around us? Anything at all?
The rising. Being willing to be the self and nothing more is the beginning of truth, the essence of humility, the coming of peace.
Station 11. Jesus is nailed to the cross. The experience. The cross brings with it a sense of finality, the judgment of forever. There is no going back from here. Jesus is nailed to a cross from which there is no return. The glory days are over. The followers are scattered. The entire enterprise seems lost. It is the bleak and final moments of the dream. There is no way whatsoever to plumb the depths of such depression to the human soul.
The call. The call of the 11th station is the call to faith, to believe that a loving God is also present in the darkness so deep that nothing can possibly ease it. It is the call to faith in the God of timelessness in a time of total defeat. It is trust that God, who created us and loves us, will hold us up through this moment so that the darkness does not break our hearts.
The model. The 11th station of the cross brings us all to face the moments when we know we must do what we do not want to do, and, more than that, feel we cannot possibly do. However, it changes our lives. The question with which the 11th station confronts us is whether or not we are spending our lives chasing dreams that do not satisfy our lives, our hopes, our emotions on something great enough to make the pain of losing them worthwhile. The great task of the spiritual life is to choose to spend it on something big enough to risk the pain of loss.
The rising. Being alone is not a burden. It is an opportunity to start over again. We find new life in the small deaths of the day. We sink into the ultimate liberation. Now there is nothing in life but the freedom of choosing again.
Station 12. Jesus dies on the cross. The experience. Death is about far more than simply the life of the deceased. It marks in every life the moment after which nothing else is ever quite the same. It can be empty times for everyone. It can be times that crush spirits and stop hearts, abort plans and blur visions deeply. Life hollows out, one way or another, for everyone concerned. These are times that stretch faith in life to the break point. Those moments suspend in time for everyone.
The call. Hope does not tell us that soon life will be the same again as it was before the loss. No, hope tells us that life will go on, differently, yes, but go on nevertheless. Hope tells us that the pieces are there for us to put together, if only we will give ourselves to the doing of it.
The model. The 12th station of the cross brings us face to face with the finality of defeat. Sometimes things don't have a happy ending in life. Sometimes we fail. There are things we are not suited to do. The question with which the 12th station confronts us is an awesome one. Am I able to accept the daily deaths of life, both the great ones and the small, knowing that death is not the end of life, only its passing over to something new in me?
The rising. When we take hold of life with all its deaths and all its resurrections, life becomes an eternal hotbed of creation given into the hands of the creature so that creation can go on creating.
Station 13. Jesus is taken down from the cross. The experience. Life, we come to understand, is not a monument. It is a crystal ball, fragile and brittle to touch. The smallest details of life threaten it. Life comes to us as the reckless joy of possibility, but it comes too with agonizing awareness that someday, when we least expect it, we may need to let go of it to begin all over again.
The call. Trust is the gift that makes life exciting. It is the golden thread between the human search for the fullness of life and the heart of God that wills it for us.
The model. The 13th station of the cross is a place prepared to let go of everything of wasted dreams and thoughts. Jesus is taken down from the cross, and our hope dies. Our thoughts are disregarded and thrown away. Our question is, am I prepared to let go of everything I ever wanted so that God's will can come through me in another way?
The rising. I will begin to find God hidden in new ideas, beckoning me to new beginnings, offering me the grace in the midst of pain to let go. Then and only then do all the deaths of the past become what they have always been meant to be, simply steps on the road that is never the end, always a new beginning of the never-ending, never static search for God.
Station 14. Jesus is laid in the tomb. The experience. There is the sense of weightlessness, the thought that life comes down nowhere at all. There is no tomorrow, no yesterday to steer by. Death is not a single action. It is many actions overlapping that haunt, plague, empty the soul of every strand of life, and all at the same time. It is a time of mixed emotions. There is a relief that comes when suffering ends. The one we love cannot be hurt again, and that is good.
The call. We can see now that the call of the Stations of the Cross is not death and despair at all. The call of the Stations of the Cross to those who walk them, burdened by their own lives, at risk of losing faith, in the very throes of a solid darkness of the heart, is to take what is good from the past and go forward with it into a future pulsating with new life.
The model. The 14th station of the cross brings us to grapple with the grace of closure. Some phases of life end and cannot be retrieved. They go by before we are ready to see them go. Worse, their going may feel like ignominy at the time, or may even look to the world like failure. Then the finality of loss may sting with grave injustice and may grieve beyond all telling of it. Yet only in the ability to realize that life goes on from one stage to another, from one kind of presence to another, can we ever come to new life. When Jesus submits to the death of his ministry, when Jesus allows both state and synagogue to still the thunder of his voice, one life ends so that another can begin, ours as well as his, so that the echo of his might thunder on in us.
The rising. The resurrection moment at the tomb rises out of the demand that we must leave it alone, fend for ourselves differently now, bring the past to a new kind of life in us. The question for the 14th station of the cross leaves in our soul is a resounding one. Am I able to trust that the tombs of my life are all gateways to resurrection?
Before you go, we've got some information about the stations. The stations are a 14-step devotional to observe Jesus' last day on earth. They are used as a mini pilgrimage as a person moves from station to station. At each station, we recall and meditate on a specific event from Christ's last day on earth. The stations originated in pilgrimages to Jerusalem as a desire to reproduce the Via Dolorosa, where Jesus is to believe to have walked to his death carrying the cross. In the late 1100s, Jerusalem fell to the Muslims. 40 years later, the Franciscans were allowed back into the Holy Land. The Franciscans received custody of the Holy Land to guard and promote the devotion of holy places. During the 15th and 16th centuries, the Franciscans began to build a series of outdoor shrines in Europe to duplicate the Holy Land. In 1686, Pope Innocent answered the Franciscans' petition and granted the Franciscans the right to erect stations within their churches. In 1731, Pope Clement extended to all churches the right to have stations erected within their churches, provided that a Franciscan father create them. By the mid to late 1800s, the bishops of England were allowed to build them without intervention from a Franciscan friar. Thank you for joining us this morning. Have a wonderful weekend and a nice week.